Now, the Wuhan Institute of Virology has had its ties severed with the United States, but the Australian government has not done the same. Why haven't we?
Well, certainly I think that we need to be reviewing our connection insofar as foreign nationals and research at the Animal Health Laboratory. There's no suggestion, Sharri, that there's been any incident here in Geelong, and of course I have my office based in Geelong, though I am a senator for all of Victoria. So I've got a particular concern about what happens here locally. But certainly the revelation that you made, that there were scientists from China working here in collaboration with the CSIRO in a jointly funded Chinese-Australian government project. And those scientists, of course, are from Wuhan, and we don't know the scope of the research, and we don't know whether there were any biosecurity or even national security issues that arose. I certainly think that we do need to review this type of research, this type of collaboration, and put this on hold until we can properly understand any or all of the national security or biosecurity risks.
Yeah, look, and as you just said, the national security or biosecurity risks, there are two separate issues here. Look, from your research and from your understanding, there has been serious issues on both counts overseas. On the national security front, there has been fairly recently, just late last year, an incident in Canada, also at Harvard. Can you elaborate on some of these? Because, you know, they really are quite important. I mean, you had Chinese scientists literally stopped on their way to the airport as they were trying to steal virus samples to take back to China.
That's right. There has been a very serious incident in the United States where a number of scientists, Chinese scientists, have been arrested. One was caught at the airport carrying biological vials. Now, there's no suggestion, of course, that anything like this has happened in Geelong, but I think we have to understand, and this is something that's been highlighted by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, a very credible international bulletin, that when you are dealing with these highly deadly pathogens, even in a very high level containment laboratory like the one here in Geelong, it is extremely risky work. We have the very best scientists here, of course, working in Geelong and across Australia, but this risk has been identified as a possible way in which a pandemic can actually be triggered. And that's because in the majority of incidents that are caused in laboratories, they are as a result of human error. And of course, all you need, Sharri, is for the virus to get into one person, for one person to catch the virus in some way. And then once they're in the community, the spread, of course, can happen very, very quickly. So I think, and I'm absolutely delighted that the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister have led the charge in calling for an international inquiry into the origins and the cause of the coronavirus. That's incredibly important. But as part of that, I really do think we have to look at the connections with our scientists and also scientists from China, including in Wuhan, and make sure that there are no cybersecurity, national security or biosecurity risks at all with what we know is very, very risky research, which of course brings with it a lot of dangers if something goes wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that as part of this research over the years, we know now that one of the scientists from that Wuhan lab, the Institute of Virology, actually had live bats flown over from one side of Australia to the other to do, research on it at the centre in your electorate. Now, this is an area of heated debate in the scientific community. You know, there are arguments that we need to do this work and that it's crucial, and the Wuhan Institute have actually given interviews where they say it's urgent, a matter of urgency to do this research to prevent a pandemic from taking place. But there is so much documentation that says that actually doing this research can cause a global pandemic if there is a leak, as you just described. And there have been serious concerns about a lack of adequate safety practices at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The Washington Post a week and a half ago broke news of a cable that was sent back in January 2018 that warned about weaknesses in the management there and also inadequate safety practices. The US diplomats and scientists from Beijing who visited that lab and met with Xi were really worried about this. Does this concern you?
Well, it does, particularly when we are not getting full transparency from the Chinese government as to what has occurred. And of course, that has been highlighted. There's been obviously a serious cover up in some of the very early things that happened when this pandemic first broke, going back to December last year. So it is very concerning. And as I say, the research that we are doing here in Australia is very important. The Animal Health Laboratory, that's now been renamed a Centre for Disease Preparedness, is doing some incredible work in terms of discovering a vaccine. Now, that's incredibly important work, Sharri, so I don't want to understate any of that. The work of the CSIRO in that regard is incredibly important. But when we are collaborating with foreign nationals, including scientists from China, I just think that we've got to look at all risks, whether they be biosecurity, whether they be national security or cybersecurity. And, we have seen how this pandemic has brought the world to its knees. We have seen the horrific damage that this is doing, the thousands upon thousands of deaths. I mean, I'm so proud of our government, frankly. We have flattened the curve and we are doing very, very well in Australia in comparison to other countries. But this has caused an absolute crisis across the world. And if that has come from this laboratory in Wuhan, then of course we need to know the truth. And as part of understanding the truth and the risks with this research, we've got to look at what we're doing in our own backyard, including in relation to the collaboration with other countries.